I want to talk about the enmity, the clash, and it's kind of a one-sided clash between two of the greatest atheists of the 19th century. And I then want to draw out the implications of that clash for the Christian view of human nature. So the two prominent atheists I'm talking about, well, one of them didn't call himself an atheist, only an agnostic, but he clearly was an atheist in that he believed that there was no God. And this is, of course, Charles Darwin. Darwin, perhaps the most influential atheist of all time. Richard Dawkins, the biologist at Oxford, once said that Darwin made it possible to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist. Why? Because he showed, you may say, a natural, requiring seemingly no divine action, a process for how species came to be, and in fact, how human beings came to be. So this is the atheistic reading, not the only reading, by the way, but an atheistic reading of Darwin, which Darwin himself seems to have, in the end, endorsed. And the other prominent atheist of the 19th century, this could probably be the second most influential atheist, and I think his atheism actually runs deeper. This is the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, the German thinker who is the author of the infamous phrase, God is dead. God is dead. Now, Nietzsche, interestingly enough, is often written about in a manner that conflates him with Darwin, as if Nietzsche embraced the Darwinian philosophy, took it on board, so that Nietzsche represents sort of philosophic atheism, and Darwin represents scientific atheism, and this is the way in which the two strands are fully compatible. There's a book by John Richardson called Nietzsche's New Darwinism, in which Richardson, a Nietzsche scholar, by the way, tries to sort of harmonize Nietzsche and Darwin. Now, interestingly, well, I said that Nietzsche's atheism ran deeper than Darwin. Let me say why. Darwin wanted to get rid of the idea of God, but he didn't want to get rid of the idea of Victorian morality. In fact, Darwin was worried that taking away the idea of God would take away the idea of conventional Victorian morality, which Darwin strongly supported. Nietzsche was the opposite. Nietzsche wanted to get rid of God and what he called the shadows of God, which is Christian morality. So Nietzsche wants to eradicate morality in the conventional sense and replace it with a kind of, you may say, new morality, a morality based upon what Nietzsche calls the will to power, the idea of somehow ascending above the human species. I mean, almost say Nietzsche wants to take evolution further, doesn't stop with man, as Darwin thought, but rather man can cross this dangerous bridge, says Nietzsche, to something better than man, what Nietzsche calls the overman, somewhat crudely called the superman. Now, the problem with trying to reconcile Nietzsche with Darwin is this. Nietzsche attacks Darwin. Nietzsche actually has a section in his autobiography called Anti-Darwin. And it begins like this. It says, scholarly oxen. I think he's thinking of people like John Richardson. Scholarly oxen means scholarly dummies. He says, suspect me of Darwinism. And so for Nietzsche, this is like an insult. First of all, Nietzsche is a German. He regards European, which is to say German and French culture, as far superior to kind of what he sees as low shopkeeper British culture. So he doesn't like Darwin in part because Darwin is an Englishman. But in a more sophisticated way, what Nietzsche says is, listen, Darwin claims that everything comes down to survival of the fittest. For Darwin, it's all about survival. And according to Darwin, our motivation is nothing more than to survive and reproduce. That's how we came to be. That's what our inner drives are all about. And Nietzsche goes, nonsense. Nietzsche agrees that this could be the case for kind of bacteria and for fruit flies and viruses and insects and fishes. For them, it is all about survival. But what about for man? Nietzsche says, observe man. Do you see human beings spend all their time trying to do nothing more than survive and reproduce? No. Nietzsche goes, really, the main inner drive of human beings is for power. Here comes Nietzsche's famous phrase, the will to power, that we have a desire to acquire and dominate and accumulate more power for ourselves, and then also to exercise power over others. Think about a guy who has, $50 million and can do whatever he wants with his life. Why is he still working? What's he trying to do? According to Nietzsche, he's trying to gain more money so he can have more influence, more status, more power. He isn't just trying to survive. Yeah, he might go for the younger wife, but on the other hand, his main drive is power itself, and it's the power that becomes the magnet that even attracts the younger wife. So for Nietzsche, power is the main thing. And Nietzsche thinks that Darwin, in that sense, has it wrong. He says Darwin's evolution is asserted but not proved. Very interesting here. Nietzsche is making kind of the same argument against Darwin that we hear from creationists. We hear from people today where they say Darwin is asserting something, but he hasn't, in fact, established it. Now, what I find striking about the Darwinian view of human nature, which is essentially humans selfishly trying to perpetuate their genes. Richard Dawkins wrote a book many years ago, I think his best book, called The Selfish Gene. And Dawkins' point is it's not so much that we are always selfish, but our genes are. It's almost like our genes want nothing more than to perpetuate themselves. And a lot of human behavior can be understood as a response to what our genes, our inner constitution is making us do or is steering us to do. But clearly Darwin has the low view of human nature. Human nature is clawingly aimed at survival and at producing descendants so that it replicates itself in the world. And Nietzsche's view of human nature is also the low view. Human beings are motivated not by generosity, but by this kind of unending concupiscence for power. Very interestingly, these views are compatible with the Christian view of human nature. They're not compatible with the whole Christian framework. Let's remember Darwin doesn't see the need for a creator to put the whole evolutionary process in motion. Nietzsche doesn't think we need either God or morality because man creates his own morality. Man can actually make himself into a creature better than man somehow. But the Christian view of human nature is the low view. The Christian view is that human nature is warped, it's broken, it is, in the words of in the understanding of the Old Testament, fallen. It's fallen away from God. And it is in need of remaking. It is in need of redemption. So without embracing either Darwinism, and as I've said before, I don't see any incompatibility between evolution and Christianity, but nevertheless, without embracing Darwin's atheistic creed or Nietzsche's rival atheistic creed, what we can say is that they do have an insight into human nature, an insight, however, that is best remedied not through an embrace of just social Darwinism, not through an embrace of Nietzsche's absurd idea that we can somehow rise above our humanity. We really can't. But through the Christian idea that we can reach out to God and achieve redemption if reciprocally he reaches down to us.